Dear AronRa, surfing the YouTube, I was really pleased to find your videos. Very well done. In general, I do agree with you. But, despite all possible, reasonable explanations, I am still concerned. Especially for the practice of creationism. In fact, for a matter of experience, I consider the controversy of creationism and evolution is just a cover-up for more important intellectual censorship and cultural revisionism. Clearly, the controversy of creationism is repeating the controversy of Galileo with the case of cosmology versus astronomy ages ago. And clearly, in both cases, in discussion was not astronomy or evolution, but the freedom of conscience to have a personal opinion. We're not the stars in the sky to be offended with Galileo, and the real problem of astronomy was not science pretending to have different answers, but religion copyrights in shaping society, from school to justice, with dogmatic, mysterious values and Masonic meritocracy. The real problem is the respect of the civil laws and civil rights, starting from the freedom of conscience to have a personal opinion. And the controversy does not really concern evolution, but the history of the modern era altogether. From the democratic values to the democratic rights. From Galileo to the French Revolution. The real point in discussion are the civil rights of the modern era, the freedom of conscience, freedom of opinion. The foundational values of the contemporary democracies. The point is not science, but the history of civil rights all along the modern era. Dear AronRa, I really loved your version of the creation of Michelangelo with the spaghetti monster. In some videos, I have said that Michelangelo has represented all deities, naked, God included, naked, in order to express that God is a human projection and is man-made. Do you believe the fresco in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican may still represent the original fresco of Michelangelo, despite it is a fake in the essence? Anyway, the reason I made this video is not evolution or creationism, but science. The reason I made this video is to share my experience with you, with numbers, and to ask a few simple, documented questions. Same as Galileo did. Here is the point. Considering the Renaissance culture was opposed by the Catholic Inquisition, and for this reason was a rebellion, a cultural revolution, a breaking point with the Catholic tradition and dogma, starting from the freedom of conscience to have a personal opinion. Considering the Renaissance culture was made of Catholic heresies in philosophy, cosmology, science, arts, religion, all listed in the index of the Catholic Inquisition. Ready for the stake. Ready to smoke. Considering the best of the Renaissance culture was systematically persecuted by the Catholic Inquisition, starting from the freedom of conscience of the ancient Greeks, the pre-Christian philosophy, the original model of democracy with different cosmologies coexisting, ages before the Renaissance and Galileo arrived. Considering the Renaissance culture was the revival, the rediscover, the rebirth of the ancient pre-Christian Greek philosophy, ages after the destruction of the idols perpetrated by the creationists. Considering the liberal and the democrat and the communists and the anarchists have been all classified heretic since the time of the French Revolution and before. Considering the best of the human culture is in the list of the Catholic heresies today, starting from the freedom of conscience to have a personal opinion, the basic of human rights. I wonder, how did the Renaissance culture become Catholic legacy and cultural tradition of the most Catholic civilization of the planet? Can you tell me when, in history, the freedom of conscience and the basic human rights have been Catholic option? Can you tell me when, in history, the Catholic civilization has promoted civil and democratic values, starting from the freedom of conscience? Can you explain the statistics of 10 out of 10 specialists from the best universities, US included, pretending to confuse victims and persecutors of the civil laws and civil rights? Starting from the freedom of conscience to vivid personal opinion, possible to demonstrate with numbers like Galileo did. Dear AronRa, what is the probability nobody, out of hundreds of millions of people, in 80 years of history? With probability, nobody ever asked so simple questions. How did the freedom of conscience become Catholic intellectual heritage? How did the Catholic heresies become Catholic traditions? Is it possible? Nobody ever asked. Is it casual? 10 out of 10 specialists and millions of the best students from the best universities, nobody ever understood the revisionism and the intellectual obligation to confuse the victims and the persecutors of the values of the civil society. What is this, a miracle, or an Holocaust? And what about the principle of identity? What about the people with no intention to accept, to confuse victims and persecutors? The Catholic culture of the Renaissance time was made of Inquisition and Counter-Reformation. What is this? The principle of identity of the monkey fish frog. Is this an inside job? An inside job with a mission to abort civil life? Or what? Is this a systematic and intentional inside job to boycott the civil life, or what? Dear AronRa, the creationists don't like reasonable answers, and with the cultural primate, don't even need to explain the intellectual revisionism of the specialists, transforming the freedom of conscience into Catholic tradition, and confusing victims and persecutors of the foundational values of the civil society. In conclusion, dear AronRa, I had a PhD offer in England, but the professors in the picture at my degree ceremony did not confirm the legal translation of my degree with marks and made me do the impression of the impostor. I wonder, what did I have best marks for? Was any ransom to pay for the kidnap of my degree? In the same period of time, I had the passport stolen, and the office of the consulate answered, after 1 year, informing I was cancelled from the population list, since, before, the stolen passport was issued. Dear barrister, I wonder, what is the political reason good enough to justify the public administration faking personal documents in the public offices? I wonder if the reason was different from the traditional, cultural primate and the racial primate scientifically demonstrated not long ago by Mussolini scientists. Dear AronRa, what do you mean for creationism? The good fellas, with the protection of the Godfather, made a job out of faking and creating documents in the public offices. And this kind of criminals also have the rights to accuse the victims, to organize revenge, and will continue harassing the victims with the complicity of the national judicial system, protecting criminals and counterfeiters. In fact, the prosecutors will never investigate the evidences of the systematic crimes perpetrated by the good fellas in the offices, but will rather investigate and harass the victims more and more, pretending to know what the victims could do, after asking for justice and demanding the respect of the laws. Dear AronRa, what I said is printed in the student textbooks. I wonder, out of millions of people, what is the probability nobody ever understood the revisionism, confusing victims and persecutors? With probability, nobody ever asked so simple questions. What is this? A miracle, or an Holocaust? I wonder, how many people have been aborted alive? Abracadabra.